Welcome back, everyone. I am absolutely thrilled to dive into today's explainer, where we are unpacking something truly mind-bending. Chapter 2 of Nāgārjuna's Mūlamadhyamakakārikā. Today, we're going to logically deconstruct something you do every single day. Okay, let's dive into this. Does motion actually exist? I mean, think about it. When you get up from your chair, walk into the kitchen, and grab that cup of coffee, you intuitively feel like an independent entity moving from point A to point B, right? It's literally the most basic assumption of our daily lives. But what if that entirely intuitive, deeply felt sense of moving is actually a complete illusion? Here's the roadmap for our explainer today. First, the illusion of motion. Second, the union of the three spheres. Third, the Madhyamaka logical proofs. Fourth, a centerless fractal cycle. And finally, what this actually means for your daily life. Section 1. The illusion of motion. Deconstructing our intuitive reality. Nāgārjuna completely dismantles our everyday assumptions about movement, change, and rest. He writes, "What has been moved is not moving. What has not been moved is not moving. Apart from what has been moved and what has not been moved, movement cannot be conceived." Now, what's really interesting here is how it points out that movement is not an inherent property of objects. It's not just something an object simply has or does in isolation. Instead, motion is an entirely dependently arisen phenomenon. Section 2, Union of the Three Spheres, the core framework of movement. According to the source material, any act of movement can be broken down into these three spheres. 1, the goer. That's the subject or the actor doing the moving. 2, the going. That's the relation or the actual action of moving itself. And 3, the destination, the object or the result being moved toward. Now, our everyday intuition tells us these are three totally separate things that just sort of happen to interact. But Nāgārjuna argues, no way. These three spheres are entirely inseparable, interdependent, and completely co-defined by our minds. There's no goer without an act of going, and there's definitely no going without a destination. So these three spheres are characterized by emptiness. Now, this doesn't mean a void or just blank nothingness. It means that phenomena lack any absolute, independent, or inherent existence. The goer, the going, and the destination are totally empty of independent reality. They exist only interdependently as mere designations. They're basically conceptual tools, co-imputed by the mind so we can navigate the world. Now, you might be thinking, okay, that's a neat philosophical theory, but I still feel like I'm moving right now. Section 3, the Madhyamaka Logical Proofs. Dismantling inherent motion. Nāgārjuna doesn't just throw claims out there. He rigorously proves them using dialectical reasoning, starting with an analysis of time. And this brilliantly illustrates his logic across the three times: past, future, and present. Let's look at the past, the gone. Well, there's no motion there because the act is completely finished. Okay, what about the future, the not yet gone? There's no motion there either because the act hasn't even begun. So that leaves the present. But if you try to isolate a present going into an infinitesimal, absolute moment of now, it just cannot be established. Why? Because motion requires a span of time to actually happen. A microscopic freeze-frame moment of the present has absolutely no room for displacement. Ergo, inherent motion cannot be found in the past, future, or present. He pushes this even further with what is called the fallacy of two motions. An opponent might argue, wait a minute, a mover possesses the act of moving. But think about the logical gymnastics required here. You would need motion 1 just to define the person's identity as a mover in the first place. Then you would need motion 2 for the actual act of going. This implies you have two separate motions running parallel, which leads to the rather comical and absurd result of having two entirely separate movers. It's a classic reductio ad absurdum argument. It proves an independent goer simply cannot inherently exist. We can also analyze this through the lens of identity versus difference. If the goer and the going are entirely identical, well, the agent and the action collapse into exactly one thing, completely destroying the distinction required for movement to even happen. Conversely, if the goer and the going are fundamentally different, then you could theoretically have a goer who isn't moving, and motion without anything actually doing the moving. Both extremes completely contradict reality. So the crucial point is this: the subject, the action, and the object, the goer, the going, and the destination, are a single, unified flux. The entire triad is an interdependent illusion. It's like a giant puzzle where you literally cannot separate the dancer from the dance. Section 4. A centerless fractal cycle. The true nature of movement. Okay, if we've just logically deconstructed movement down to the studs, what are we actually left with? Well, the sources reveal that motion isn't a rigid, independent event. It is an illusory, limitless, and centerless karmic cycle. It's a massive, wondrous web of interdependent conditioning that is infinitely more dynamic than our everyday perception. Let's break down the fractal nature of this cycle. When you arrive somewhere, when you are the goer at destination, you instantly become the goer at origin for the very next action. Because of this constant interdependent flux, we can never find an absolute first beginning, an absolute middle duration, or an absolute final end to the process of movement. Just like a karmic process, the results constantly feed right back into new causes. Nothing remains exactly the same for even 2 consecutive moments. The cycle is, as the sources phrase it, there yet not there. This is beautifully captured in this poetic quote from the text. Like a dream and like a mirage, like a city of Gandharvas. So motion, mover, and route are non-existent. Now, I know this sounds a bit like nihilism at first glance, but actually, scratch that. It's really not. Nāgārjuna isn't saying the world doesn't matter. He is describing a reality that is vibrantly, deeply, and infinitely interconnected. Section 5. Meaning for daily life. Practical applications of emptiness. Let's move to and see how this builds into our day-to-day lives. While this philosophy certainly involves some intense mental gymnastics, it's ultimately a profoundly practical tool meant to help us balance what's called the 2 truths. On a conventional level, sure, we still plan our days, we still travel to the store, and we still engage with the world. We use these concepts as provisional, everyday tools. But absolutely, we drop that rigid grip. We stop reifying these concepts. We stop pretending there's some ultimate, absolute ground to stand on, which saves us from the rigid psychological attachment that causes so much suffering. Living this philosophy means practicing what the sources call acting without acting. You engage in life's activities with total effectiveness, but without the psychological baggage of needing absolute certainty. It allows you to completely deconstruct your fixed sense of self, realizing you aren't a static entity moving through time, but a fluid, dynamic process of relational events. You start to embrace flux, seeing every destination not as some final, anxiety-inducing goal, but simply as a starting point for a brand new cycle. And this brings us to the ultimate goal of Nāgārjuna's complex reasoning, the middle way. This is a philosophical and meditative path totally free from the tyrannical hold of fixed concepts. By logically dismantling the extreme views of both absolute existence and absolute non-existence, we are left open to the fluid, non-dual nature of reality exactly as it actually is. I want to leave you with this final provocative thought to meditate on as you step away from our explainer today. If the goer cannot exist independently of the going, then who exactly do you think you are when you move through your day? Next time you walk across a room, try to notice the illusion. Thanks so much for exploring this amazing topic with me.